Welcome to the MS Gym podcast, where we give you the tools to live life by design, not by diagnosis. I'm your host, Brooke Slick, and here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another season of the MS Gym podcast. Jodi and I had planned on taking the summer off, as we typically do, but opportunities kept presenting themselves that we simply couldn't turn down. We've been absolutely humbled and honored that potential guests have been coming to us instead of the other way around. That's right, word continues to spread about the MS Gym, continues to spread about Coach Trevor, his 100% commitment to and extensive knowledge of how the MS body responds to movement, and his well-informed grasp on how neuroplasticity can restore functionality that's been previously perceived as impossible. With that kind of reputation, word gets around fast and far. And that's exactly what happened with this episode's guest. A friend of hers told her about the MS Gym. She took a look at some of Trevor's videos and was intrigued, so she decided to contact the MS Gym to see how she could work with Trevor, only to find out that we had been trying to contact her to be on the podcast. You see, this was no random guest that we were reaching out to. This was a Hollywood actress, famous for her role as Meadow Soprano on the long-running HBO series The Sopranos, who, after keeping her MS diagnosis under wraps for around 16 years, decided to go public. Little did she know, the MS world would be cheering her on, anxious to see how she could use her far-reaching platform to shine a light on MS. If you haven't figured it out by now, our guest on today's episode, as well as an upcoming episode, is JAMIE-LYNN Sigler, a 42-year-old mother of 2 young boys and wife to an incredibly supportive husband. Over the next 2 episodes, Jamie opens up on a wide range of topics, from how she handled being diagnosed at a young age, making the decision to go public, the gift of workplace accommodation, raising young children, how she uses cannabis for relief, to, most importantly, her own experience with Trevor and the MS Gym. I know, you're like, Brooke, come on, can we please just get to it? I can't help it. I'm excited. All right, let's go. I'm so excited. We have with us today JAMIE-LYNN Sigler.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
I mean, excited is not a strong enough word. It's a pleasure to have you on. When Ken, our marketing guy, comes to me and he says, "Hey, would you like to interview JAMIE-LYNN Sigler?" I'm like, yes, I would. Yes, I would.
Well, I didn't know. So a girlfriend of mine who also lives with MS had forwarded me some of Trevor's videos that he had posted, and I didn't know about the MS Gym. And so immediately I'm watching them and like devouring them and like following. And then I opened up messages to DM you guys to talk about like how I can be in touch. And then I saw that you were trying to contact me or had written me, and I don't know if it's good or bad. Like I never read my DMs because I feel like I'm going to unleash like a Pandora's box of like terrible things that are going to make me feel bad. So I just never look. But then I saw that you guys were trying to contact me. Anyway, so here we are. I'm so happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to kind of backtrack a little. You were diagnosed with MS at age 20. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. 21 years ago.
That's insane.
Yes.
Absolutely insane. I mean, I know that there are plenty of people that are diagnosed that young, but I can't imagine. I think to myself, when I was just going over your stuff, I thought, I wonder if I would have taken MS seriously or not when I was 20, or as seriously as I did at 42.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't have recognized the weight of it at that time. You're busy.
I didn't. You know, so I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease actually first at 19. And I think, you know, we'll never know for sure, but perhaps it was what sort of woke up a dormant MS gene, or it's what sort of caused demyelinization that now is MS in me. Yeah. But when I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease at 19, I I recovered quickly. I did like a 3-week course of antibiotics and steroids and this. And while it was scary when it came on, and felt like there was like partial paralysis in my lower body, and I was suffering from incontinence and couldn't feel my legs, after a couple of weeks in the hospital on this medication, I was okay. So when I got diagnosed with MS and being 20 years old, and Sopranos was like peaking and my life was just starting, I think I treated it like the Lymes, where I was like, oh, okay, I'll get some medicine and I'll be fine. And for a number of years, it was kind of like that. I had to do like sorry, I'm just getting right into it. Is this what we're ready to do? Okay.
Loving
it. I was on this medication originally called, I think it was like Avonex or something like that. And I would do every 2 or 3 days, like an injection, and it made me feel really crappy. I would feel like I had the flu every time. And so I wasn't consistent with it. When I traveled, I didn't bring them with me. And, I wasn't a good patient. I didn't understand the seriousness of MS, but I also think I didn't want to.
Right.
And I wasn't affected daily by it. So I was like kind of in denial.
Right.
And then when I was around 23, 24, I went through a divorce, and it was a very stressful time. And that's when things started to manifest. I started to have some issues with my gait. I started to have bladder incontinence again, so things that were, very uncomfortable and scary. And I panicked. I did a lot of, doses of corticosteroids, and all during this time as well. It's a secret. I've told no one.
Right.
And so that just added a whole other layer of suffering. Yeah. And, it's people didn't talk about things being wrong back then. Do you know what I mean? We were still in this mentality, like everything's perfect, everything's fine. And I grew up as such a perfectionist. I wanted to never be an issue for anyone. And so I hid all my problems all the time. And so for quite a number of years, it was much harder than it needed to be, or than it already was. And then I would say from the ages of like 24 to 31, I was just really suffering, not only from the physical symptoms, but just like how to live with this, how to deal with it. If somebody told me that somebody in Costa Rica for $50,000 would give me a shot to take this away, I would book a flight and pay the money. Like I was doing everything I could to just get rid of this, not deal with it, seeing different doctors. If this didn't work, I would find somebody else. And I wasn't consistent. I wasn't taking good care of myself in hindsight, even though I thought I was. And I also at the time, like I have to give myself a break. I was 25 years old doing it on my own. Like I didn't talk to my parents about it. I didn't talk to my friends about it. And
life was happening.
Life was happening. I was still working. I was still acting. I was, I moved from New York to LA. It was really hard. It was really, really, really hard. And it really wasn't until I met my husband around age 30, 31, and I got pregnant by accident. And after I had my son, that I kind of slowed down. I now had a partner that was in this with me, that wasn't gonna let me off the hook. It wasn't gonna, he kept me focused. He's like, we need a plan. We need to help take care of you. You're not going to do this anymore. You're not going to your doctors alone anymore. You can't, because you're living with a disease and then trying to take in all this information and have all these plans. You need support. And I didn't have any until him. And so then for the past 10 years, I've been pretty much stable. The MS has, I've had no new lesions in 10 years. I've had no disease activity in 10 years. That doesn't mean I'm not without struggles, right? But it took me a while to, like you said, take the disease seriously, understand what I was dealing with, but also, everybody's journey is different, but I can imagine that there's I always say like the emotional journey with MS is far more difficult than the physical
right.
one.
The unpredictability.
The unpredictability, the acceptance that something is wrong. I wasn't a good patient clearly for a while. Just like coming to terms with all of it and trying to figure out how to not just survive, but thrive in the best way that I could with it, took a great amount of time, but I'm very encouraged with where I'm at, especially after just talking to Trevor, which I know we'll talk about. But I just, I have a lot of hope still for living with something for 21 years where, look, just last week I had a dark moment where I was really sad and really frustrated that I was robbed of a lot of my youth and my carefree time in my life. I still feel young at 41 and I still have a lot of hope for my future. So I think there's something to be said for people that live with MS. I find like they don't call us warriors for nothing. You get to see life through a different lens. And I always say like, it might've hardened my body, but it's softened my heart. Yes. And I'm grateful for it in very many ways of the way it's allowed me to look at life.
Right. And others who struggle with chronic illness,
or anything. Yes.
Right. It does. It puts a completely different emotional spin on everything you look at.
Yep.
One of the questions, which I think a lot of women or men who have MS enter into a relationship.
Yeah.
How do you approach that? What did you say to your then boyfriend or?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like dating in my 20s and sort of trying to figure out when you tell this person, especially because like I told you, it was a secret for me. So it wasn't something I was out with necessarily, like when it felt like this was a person I was going to share this information with. And obviously I was fortunate enough at the time that a lot of my symptoms were, quote, like invisible, or you didn't see that I was struggling with something, right, that I was able to keep it a secret. But obviously when you're talking about like an intimate relationship, there's things that you can't hide sometimes. And so my husband and I think and even I guess in the other boyfriends I had prior to him, I would say it felt like a couple of weeks in or a couple of months, like when it felt like this was going to be something serious, or this is, because it's such a big part of you. It felt wrong for me to not share. So if somebody felt like they were going to become my boyfriend, if it was going to become serious, I would share the information immediately. And it was always greeted with kindness and compassion. I was always scared to tell the other person. And I would always lead with like, it's okay if like, I get it if this doesn't feel like something you want to like take on or be with me, which I would tell anybody else. If my friends told me that, I'd be like, you're crazy. How dare you say that? Like that doesn't take any value away from who you are. But I felt that way. Right. And I was always pleasantly surprised with people's reaction. I think like in a lot of my journey with MS, I've learned that people are really kind. Like there's definitely been a lesson that it's made me have a lot more faith in like people and how willing they are to help and how willing they are to see past these things. And, as far as like my husband now, I think if anything, he's just sad that I have to deal with it, but he doesn't make me feel like he has to deal with it, if that makes sense,
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. At what point, like what was the tipping point? Because as you said, it was a secret for so long.
Yeah.
You live a very public life and you were living a very public life at the time. What was the tipping point where you said, okay, everybody needs to know. I need to let it out. The public's got to know, no more hiding.
So I started doing I did like a couple of TV pilots and then a TV show between the ages of like 29 and 31. And during that time, issues with my gait started to become more visible. So people would be like, are you limping? What's going on? You're walking funny. And I would make up excuses like I hurt my back or my ankle or this and that. And it was so uncomfortable. I hated lying. I always felt like I was always looking over my shoulder. I could barely concentrate or enjoy the actual work I was doing because I was so focused on just trying to walk well and walk straight and keep this hidden that like acting became a stressful thing for me to do. And it was scary and it was terrible. And so I did my last show up until I got pregnant with my first son. And then after I had him, I was like, oh, great, I'm not going to work. I'm just going to take a break so I won't have to deal with this. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 3 years. And while I loved being with him, I really missed acting and like a big part of me and who I am. And my husband and I were also getting married at the time. And I felt like, for him and for me, for my son, what am I trying to teach him about the world? That, everybody's deserving of opportunity. He was aware of some of my limitations, but was I going to ask him now to lie to me when he went to preschool if somebody asked him a question? Like, this is not the world that I'm trying to have my son grow up in. And I want him to I just felt like it had been enough time and that the excuses were running out and nothing was serving me. It was stressing me out. I wanted to just come clean and see like what the world would have to offer after that, because there weren't really anyone out with MS. Like there weren't people in the professional field that were talking about anything, that they were possibly struggling with or dealing with. I mean, even now, like the scope is so large between mental health, physical health, all of the things. And I'm so glad for it. But even in 2016, that like people weren't really talking about it much. So when we were getting married, People Magazine wanted to do a story on our wedding. And I remember I called my manager at the time who knew I had MS. And I said, I think I'm ready to talk about it. And I think this is the time. This is a celebratory, wonderful moment in my life. I don't want this to be a sad story. I want this to be in a moment where I'm like, look, here I am. I have this beautiful family. I'm getting married. I'm starting my life. And I have been living with MS for 16 years and I am okay. And it felt like the right time. And I had nothing but support from everyone around me. And I didn't realize though, like the day I knew that the story was coming out, I remember I woke up and I was so emotional and I didn't want to look at my phone. And I was so scared because it was my biggest secret. I was just something that my few friends had protected me for so long. It just felt so vulnerable and I didn't know what to expect. And truly my entire life changed for the better after that.
Yeah, I know. I remember when it came out. I mean, I remember reading it and thinking, and the whole MS world, maybe you don't know this, but the whole MS world was like, yes, exposure, we're just real people living real lives, living large. I mean, how much better does it get?
Yeah.
And it can all be done while having MS.
That's right. And that's all I've ever really wanted when I talk about MS is for people to just know, like, I feel I'm going through what you're going through. Like, I get it. Like, I don't have a special case because I have like some sort of celebrity status. Like my MS isn't easier. My MS isn't more special. It's just as hard. It's just as real. But yes, I try to toe this line, especially with like social media where like, I don't want to talk about it all the time, but I'm not also going to ignore it. I don't want people to think that I'm totally fine and living this life and never talking about it because that's unfair too. I realize the responsibility that I have also being somebody with a public platform, like talking about this. I do feel a great sense of responsibility when it comes to it.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on and talking about it just like you're one of us, which you are. MS does not discriminate. It doesn't care what, who you are, how much you make, how much you don't, what, what ethnicity, like it doesn't care. It just absolutely does not care. Now, tell me this, when it comes to working, because I know, I still remember, I think it was during the pandemic. Of course, I binged on Hallmark, like all winter long.
You wanted to feel good.
Yes, absolutely. I was tired of the news. I was just, so, and I remember, I don't even remember what the episode was called, but you were in an episode and it was a winter scene. I want to say you were an aunt or you were, I don't remember, but you were like a confidant of someone and you're walking along outside, I think in the snow. And at this point, I knew that you had MS. But it's interesting. I have MS eyes, so I see things, when you have MS and you look at other people who have MS, you see things.
Yep.
And you were walking along and you were holding the person's arm.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, I wonder if she's purposely, it looked completely natural. And somebody who didn't have MS would never think twice about that. It was an awesome scene, just cozy, comfy winter walking along, and I thought, I wonder if she's doing that purposely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, I shot that prior to people knowing I have MS. So that was when I was having to be crafty. And so in the scene, I remember suggesting to the director, let's have us lock arms so that I could feel more comfortable in the scene. Now that I am out about MS and I work on a show called Big Sky and my character doesn't have MS, so they work everything around it. We do that all the time. Everybody's creative. Everybody's in on different ways that they can help me. And I'm so grateful for it, which allows me to enjoy my job and just worry about my performance as opposed to any of the physicality. So, but yes, you, like you said, you have MS eyes, you saw it, and that it was exactly why I did it. Yeah.
Now, tell me, so you go to try out or audition or whatever for Big Sky. What do you say? Obviously they probably all know that you have MS. Yeah. But what do you say? How do you say, okay, I can, here's the things I can't do. I can't run. I can't jump. I can't,
I always have to have this conversation before every job, or I'll call the director or the showrunner. And that's exactly what I did. I called him and I said, listen, because this character that they cast me for, that they wanted me for in the very first episode, is running for her life in the woods. And when they first came to me, I was like, oh no, I can't do it. And my manager's like, Jamie, I'm not going to let you say no to jobs because you physically don't think you can do it. Have a conversation first. And then because I always come from this place where I'm like, listen, I don't want anyone to compromise anything artistically that you want if I physically can't do it. I never want to feel like a burden. That is the last thing I ever want. I never want to step on a set and feel uncomfortable or self-conscious. No one's ever made me feel that way, but it's my biggest fear. So I always have a conversation and I call and I say, here's what I can and I can't do. I can walk a couple of steps here and there, that I can mask the gait issue that I have. Other than that, I cannot run. I cannot jump. I can't do stairs I can do them, but you're not going to want to use the footage if this character doesn't have MS. Right. I was like, fortunately for me, I don't have fatigue issues. I don't have cognitive issues. You never have to worry about any of that, but this is what I have. So what they did was I had a stunt double, a body double. She did a lot of the running and stuff, but the director of this particular episode really wanted to see my face with the guy chasing me and me screaming and crying. So they took a Raptor or a Polaris type, those off-road vehicles, and they put a rig in the back of it. They put a seat and they strapped me completely with a harness to this seat with a camera strapped right in front of me. They had the guy running behind me and they drove, and I just moved my body like I was running and screaming and crying, and we filmed this whole scene. And so I was hysterical crying that day on the set of just so moved and appreciative, but also just wow. Like, look what people are willing to do.
Right.
This is such an example of accessibility, inclusivity. And I was so grateful. But what actually this job, so that's this job really, I love so much. I love the character I play, but it's really allowed me to realize like the MS is not such a burden and people are willing to work around it. And I'm very grateful. But with that said, what it's now given me the confidence of is, okay, the next role I play, I want to show the MS. I don't need to hide it, because the role doesn't have to be about that. I'm so many things in my life. I am a mother, I am a sister, I am a friend, I am a wife. I have so much going on in my life. I could play any character that just happens to have MS. So I'm really looking forward to the day where I can represent myself and so many other people on screen by just being me. And I think that the reason why I've wanted to hide it or thought I had to hide it is because we haven't really seen many examples of that. And I think that we see this sort of shift happening in general,
yes,
especially in Hollywood, because this is how we see the world, right? Yeah. Through TV and film, they're telling us how to see the world. And so it is my goal that my next role, for sure, I'm not wanting to hide it. I'm not wanting them to work around it. Just let me be me and play this role to its fullest. But without this job, I wouldn't have been able, I think, to get there, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And that is an exciting prospect that I look forward to watching. I mean, and it won't be just people with MS who are thinking she's living out loud despite the disease, you know, because that's what we're all doing. We wish we all could be viewed that way. And I love it when you say, because I always say this too, I just so happen to have MS.
Yeah.
And all these other things. MS is, you know, you live with it, especially, you know, you live with it so long, it's a part of you. It is you, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that's a fantastic idea.
Well, you know, I think it also was just a journey for me of where I'm almost embarrassed to say, but I find that there's other people that have dealt with this too, where like I started to feel like so much shame around it and embarrassed about it, like because of my limitations or the difference. And I hated feeling that way. And it really took me a long time to accept it and accept myself. And so I think that's just like more steps in that direction of like ridding myself of any guilt or shame or any just feelings that I don't deserve to be having that I was inhabiting, you know, because of, you know, I lived 21 years without any disability, and then to live the next 20 with like disability entering into my life, it's something that's really hard to wrap your head around.
Right. Now, I think in the last 2 years, you made a move to Texas from California, correct?
Yeah.
And you renovated a house. I remember, I don't know where I saw it online, I think you were featured in Architectural Digest or something. I know it was gorgeous. And I remember a velvet couch. That's all I can remember. Velvet couch.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, and you can tell me now, I wonder if during that renovation, you made any design choices that cater to your life with MS.
I didn't make any.
Nobody else would look at, nobody else would even notice. They would just, you know, but you did it because it's easier for you to live with MS.
I didn't make any design choices, but we bought our house, which is a 1-story house because of that.
Okay.
We have like, right now the room I'm in is upstairs because it's like away from my children. And we have to go downstairs to go down to like our yard, but the whole house itself is on one level. So yes, that like buying this house, that we take the MS into consideration of me not having to do stairs to go up into my bedroom, up and down every day, things like that. So, you know, of course there are decisions that are being made, or we're conscious about like, how can we make mom's life a little bit easier? Because I try to do as much as I can without my kids having to think about that, or my family. But that was one decision that we made that we realized was going to be just a lot easier for me.
Right. All right. Moving on to, you mentioned your family. I definitely want to talk about your kids. You have 2 young boys.
Mm-hmm.
They are 4, and your older one
will be 9 on Sunday.
Oh, adorable. Adorable. Now, a lot of women who have MS during a pregnancy, they're relieved of their symptoms. It's just, it's a hormonal thing. They don't know exactly what. There are studies about it in Europe, like I think last year, the year before. Did you experience that? And then, unfortunately, afterwards, a lot of women have a relapse.
Right.
Did you, before you became pregnant, did you know about all that? We hope you enjoyed episode 1 of 2 with Jamie-LYNN Sigler. Be sure to tune in for episode 2, where Jamie shares her experience of raising young children with MS. She'll talk about how she vacations with young children, what type of diet she adheres to, and what type of cannabis she uses for spasticity. All this and much more on the next episode of the MS Gym podcast. If you'd like to know more about the MS Gym, you can find them at themsgym.com, on Instagram, and on Facebook. If you'd like to know more about what I've been up to lately, you can find me on Instagram and at brookslick.com. We'll see you on the next episode.